to tell us if we are coming through loud and clear.
Okay, well, I just got the notification that this meeting is being live streamed.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay, I think we are live now on Facebook. I'd like to welcome everybody. This is our episode 6 of our afternoon coffee and conversation, special morning edition, you might say. Lance Mosher is with me, and we're going to talk about adoption today, and he's in the process of it. So, how you doing out there, Lance?
We're doing okay, and sorry about the noise. And I'm not one to always talk about the weather, but I gotta mention it here because we got some rain pounding on the roof.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear it.
No, I can't.
All right, good.
So I think we're good.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So and I'm having just a quick technical thing here. I need to do get rid of that. Okay. And so, if you would just give us a quick bio, I've been doing this for a couple of weeks now. So, if you wouldn't mind giving us a quick bio and tell the audience about yourself.
Yeah, and I suppose since you and I are connected because of Christianity and our passion and profession to proclaim the gospel, I suppose it's fitting to give you more of my Christian biography. But I was raised in a home that didn't really have religion or Christianity as the central part, but we would say that we were Lutherans, and being raised in that household, we were Lutherans by sensus purpose only, and we had a couple of more moral guidelines that we tried to follow. But it wasn't until I was nearly 18 years old that I was introduced to the gospel. And it was after I had been tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine.
Hmm.
And then I did become a Christian in 2003. And soon afterward, I met Kristen, who would become my wife. And then soon after that, in 2012 BC, that is before children, we we decided to go to New Zealand, and we were missionaries there for 9 years, and then returned back to the US back in 2021. And that's when I started bumping into you quite frequently at certain events like the lectureships and the Polishing the Pulpit and Connect conference. And it
Hmm.
wasn't until I guess earlier this year that we connected over the concept of adoption, because at my exhibit booth, I had an advertisement for the opportunity to serve the adoption that we were going through.
Okay, yeah, and I had already gone through the adoption process, and I forgot to mention you're also the host of the Topical Bible Study channel here on YouTube. You
Yes.
want to talk a little bit about that for just a second? And
Yeah, sure. And for those who are good expository preachers, I know the word topical is something you're allergic to. This is no way or no reason to ignore context. But in 2010, I was a brand new preacher, and I was still new in the faith. And I needed to come up with content to preach about, but also I still had a lot of Bible questions. So what I would do on Mondays is start working through those Bible questions on Monday mornings, and that would kind of give me topics to preach on coming the following Sunday. But I would start putting those lessons on a blog site. And then before I knew it, I was teaching people around the world while I slept. And I thought that was pretty cool. I was reaching more people around the world through the internet than I was from the pulpit. And not for a second was I thinking I was outsourcing myself or anything like that. But I just knew that there was an opportunity there. And now, fast forward 15 years, it is a big part of our ministry now that we're releasing our lessons on our website called topicalbiblestudies.com, and our YouTube channel, which I don't know if anybody's got their phone out, but they could scan that QR code if it focuses. But anyway, it's youtube.com/topical Bible studies, and we release deep dives into our Bible questions almost every single week.
okay. Now you are in the adoption process, and we've been talking a little bit about that. Now you're doing it probably a little different than most, as you have been going out of state.
Yes.
Um, Now our adoption process was very quick. I think I had mentioned we were called on our daughter was born Friday. We were called Sunday. We picked her up Tuesday.
Yeah.
Did not, instant parents don't even have to add water, and we were on it. Now, but you've got a little bit different situation, and I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls that you've run into.
Hmm.
We did not run into those other than we had to go to family at the last minute to get some of the funds together because this is an expensive
Yes.
proposition and talk a little bit about how folks who might be considering adoption can get some help with the financing. Now, state adoption pools, I'll throw this disclaimer out, they seem to be cheaper when people go through that. The feedback I've gotten from those experiences is it is a lot cheaper. However, there are also some issues there you got to concern yourself with. But
Right.
when we started, we had a couple of false starts, and in one instance, we talked to an agency that seemed reputable, but the fees were really high, but they were also in some kind of fancy offices, and that kind of was a turnoff to us. And the agency we finally settled with was much more reasonable, but still high. So let's talk a little bit. Why is it so high and so hard sometimes to come across the finances to be able
Hmm.
to adopt when all these children are out
Yeah.
there needing homes?
Absolutely. And that's the biggest emotion behind all of this. There are parents who have been trying to adopt for 3 years and still don't have a child in their arms. And yet there are those, obviously, there are more children going out there who need parents. And why can't we make this cheaper? Why can't we make it easier? I have some ideas, but I have no real answers. And to clarify a little bit by saying that we are doing this adoption out of state, what we mean is by the state. We're not going through the state, through the government, but we are doing this in a sense private. And so our adoption agency is Lifetime Adoption. They've got offices in California and Florida, and they work with domestic adoption in all 50 states. And so we started working with an agency like this because we thought that our chances of getting matched quickly would be higher if we were working with all 50 states rather than something local or even just in the state of, at the time, Louisiana or now in Tennessee. And so we were working with Lifetime Adoption for 2.5 years. Now, this is an agency who has full-time employees who are working around the clock to help families like us get matched with birth mothers. And a big part of that expense is, this doesn't sound right using this word in the context of adoption, but advertising, where not only your family is being advertised, but the agency itself is being advertised. And that's because right now, when there is a mother, for example, this is not the only reason people place their children for adoption, but you can imagine in many cases it's a mother who finds herself with an unexpected pregnancy. And the first thing she's going to do, working through all of the questions in her mind, is go to the internet. What do I do when I'm facing this unwanted or
Hmm.
unexpected pregnancy? They'll go to Google. And a lot of advertising dollars go to make sure that these agencies are the first hits that she sees rather than perhaps Planned Parenthood or some other option out there. We might use the word option in quotation marks. And then there are also the full-time employees who are taking calls from these women in distress and trying to give them immediate counsel, and then also offering them this option for adoption and talking to them clearly and calmly about what it might look like. And in addition to this, we want to make sure, and when I say we, I mean pretty much everybody involved in adoption wants to make sure that there are no hindrances or stumbling blocks in the way for this birth mother to placing her child for adoption. For example, we don't want them to have any financial burden because in many cases, abortion is free and considered the easy way out. And so we want to make this as easy or seamless as possible. So therefore, a lot of adoptive parents are prepared to provide the birth mother with living expenses during her pregnancy because she might be in a situation. For example, we were connected with a lady who was homeless and she was facing this unexpected pregnancy, and we were prepared to give her money or a safe environment, a healthy environment for her to live during her pregnancy. And then there are the medical costs and so on. And then there are the attorney fees as well. And then you've got to prepare to travel. In some cases, we were prepared to travel all the way to Los Angeles to receive this baby. And then there are the further attorney fees on both the adoptive side of things and the birth mother side of things. So
Got to
it's,
get the lawyers in there, don't you?
yes, that's right. They got to get their money, and that's where a big bulk of the money comes in.
Now, You mentioned the big A, abortion, and
Mm,
it just occurred to me. I knew somebody back in the early to mid 1980. I haven't looked into this in years. They were facing the possibility of an unplanned pregnancy, and they looked into abortion. And at that time, for as little as $150, you could get an abortion. And now, if you're on Medicaid, I think it will pay for it. So you're right. There is an issue there with the cost
mhm.
being cheaper. Now, at one time, and it's been a few years since we did it, but there were tax credits and some deductions available. They were set to expire at one point. I think it was the in the towards the end of the Obama administration, but I don't know if those ever got extended.
Yes,
I mean, I contacted my congressman and said, "Hey, you need to extend these." I
right.
don't know. Can you speak to that? Are they
Yes.
still around?
They are still around and they have increased. And so, for a family who goes through adoption, once the adoption is finalized, in the following year, they can get up to, I think, $17,000 in tax credit. So, they're not going to get money put in their hands, but it is going to be a bit of a relief when it comes to tax time for them if they qualify. And actually, in our case, because of our financial situation, we're not going to qualify for much at all. But for most families, there is going to be that tax credit. It's not going to be a check handed to you, but at least a relief during tax time.
Yeah, and that's where you need to talk to your tax professional about more details on
That's
that.
right.
Yeah, yeah, we're not giving tax or
Yeah,
money advice
absolutely.
here, okay?
Yep.
Other than I would say if you can do it on as little borrowed money as possible. Now, when we started the process, we at the time owned a house, and the president, it was a small town bank, and we knew the president of our bank, and he had adopted children, and he was a big supporter of adoption. And so he made home equity lines of credit, things like
Hmm.
that available. But you got to remember that anything you borrow's got to be paid back. And
That's
so
right.
I advise as little as possible if you can save for it or family. Now, when when you uh, when you get the call, do you have to keep something handy ready to get on the next plane to Los Angeles or Miami or
Yes,
wherever? And
that's right.
that's a little unsettling, isn't it?
It is, but at the same time, parents should always be prepared for something like that. So we're also different in that a lot of people consider adoption as maybe a second or last resort to have children. They might deal with infertility for a number of years and then eventually get to the point where they want to adopt. And I think that's reasonable. That's good. But for us, we have biological children. But from the moment of our getting serious together as a relationship, we started talking about family plans. And both of us were surprised to find out that as individuals, we wanted adoption to be a part of our story, regardless of fertility or infertility. And so it wasn't until 2021, once we got settled in the United States, that we could seriously start pursuing this. Long story, we tried to do it while we were living in New Zealand, but it was too complicated, and there were a lot of roadblocks for us while living in New Zealand. So we had to wait until we were in the United States. Um, but now,
Were you
uh,
trying to adopt from a child from New Zealand at that time?
Well, we were just trying to get the ball rolling to be an adoptive family in New Zealand. And so, actually, I forgot where I was going with what we were talking about.
The long process, and you waited to come home back to the
Right.
States.
Yes, but I brought that up for something else as well.
Oh,
Oh yeah, the bag. So anyway, I brought all of that up to say that when my wife was pregnant with both of our children, when we were getting about 5, 6 weeks close to the due date, our midwives were advising us, make sure you have your hospital bag ready because labor, we have a due date, but labor could begin at any time. So just make sure your hospital bag is ready so that when it begins, you can just jump in the car and that's not anything that's going to be in your way or thinking clearly or whatever, like anything like that. And so in the same way for us, while we are waiting for this phone call from our adoption agency, we could get it at any time saying, look, there is a birth mother in labor right now, and she lives in Montana. You need to get here as soon as possible because she's chosen you to be the birth parents. Okay, let's go.
and that's something that's new. Now, I've talked to some adoptee, like my wife is adopted, but she was at a time when everything was closed off, and
Right.
you didn't know anything about the birth parents. And I've got a interview coming up with another adoptee who was similar circumstances. So, can you talk? Let's talk a little bit about how the selection process goes.
Yes.
We had prepared a family book with pictures of us, our siblings, our parents. All of our parents were still living at the time, and activities, trips we've taken, and it was a little
hmm
storybook
Yep.
with
And
color
we have
pictures and.
Yep, we've done the same. They call it our profile. And in
Mhm.
addition to this profile, since we're living in 2025, we've also prepared a kind of a professional looking documentary about our family too for birth mothers to look at to while they're choosing adoptive families. And what we're going through is what is called open adoption. And when we started this journey, that phrase was kind of scary to us. We didn't know what open adoption
Mhm.
was. It sounds like, oh no, is this going to be like a dual custody kind of thing? But that's not what it is at all. So over the years and decades that closed adoption was the thing where birth parents and adoptive parents really don't know who each other are, and the adopted child actually doesn't even have to know that they're adopted, and they'll never know their birth parents. Well, that turned out to be pretty traumatic for people growing up, not knowing that they were adopted or not knowing their adoptive parents. In addition to that, imagine being a parent of a 4-year-old who suddenly is showing symptoms of a serious illness or a serious disease and not knowing if this is part of this child's heritage or anything that could be hereditary. And so, another benefit of having open adoption is having medical records and things like that.
That was a factor sort of in our deciding to adopt because my wife was adopted. They did go to the adoption agency to see what there was, and it was heavily redacted.
hmm
And what information there was useless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and then adopting somebody, in our case, it is closed at the request of the birth family.
Sure.
So there's a lot of questions, we'll just have to keep our eyes peeled.
Yeah.
Now, I did know somebody, for instance, that when it comes to adopt, this is where I'm kind of changing gears just a little bit here, but when it came to adoption, the issue of being open. Well, let me say, I got a couple thoughts in my mind right now that are kind of struggling with each other. The idea of an open adoption. Now, you said that sounds scary, and it sounded scary to me too.
hmm
And one of the agencies we spoke to, I brought up the issue of, and this was partially due to an actual case, legal case that I knew about, where, okay, we're 5 or 6 years down the road, and the birth mother, birth father, somebody decides, hey, I want my kid back. Are we going to have a legal fight?
Right.
And the lady I mentioned this to, if she was wearing readers like I do, I think I would have gotten this look because she just kind of looked at me and rolled her eyes and said, "You've been watching too many movies on the Lifetime channel."
That's it.
She said, "Once it's done, once the judge signs off on it, we're
That's
done.
it. Absolutely.
Unless fraud or something like that comes into play, then you might have a problem.
Right.
But other than that, we call it TPR, termination of parental rights.
That's right.
It's happened. It's over. They have no rights. They are legal strangers." So I felt a little better
Yeah.
on that one. Now, as far as the medical information, that was the one thing I was the most interested in. Was I would like
Mhm.
to know something about the family, medically and hereditary. What do we need to keep our eyes open for now? Most people know watching this. If they don't know, my wife and I are both Caucasian. Our daughter's black. I know, for instance, high blood pressure and diabetes are common, and so we have to keep an eye out for things
Sure.
like that, plus medical conditions we have had. I tell the doctor, hey, let's keep an eye on this or on that.
hmm
And just, I don't suspect any. Well, I've had some thyroid issues, and I told the one pediatrician, I just want to keep an eye on that. And he thought about it, and he looks at me and he says, well, why do you think she's having problems with her thyroid? And I said, I didn't say that. I just
Yeah.
said, I want to keep an eye on it
Sure.
and make sure if there is a problem, we get on it right away. And so I felt a little bit just nervousness, just about the medical
Yeah.
issues of it. So far, she's been healthy. I mean, our daughter,
Good.
you couldn't have asked. She's 12 years old and 5'6",
Yeah.
and I'm 5'9". So
Oh,
we're
she's
almost seeing eye to eye. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh,
And regarding open adoption, here's a situation that might come up. There's the birth mother. She is 3 months pregnant. She's now chosen a birth family. Now, she might have reasons why she says, "Look, I don't ever want to see this baby. Even after the baby's born, don't let me see the baby. Just put it directly into the adoptive parent's arms. We're going to cut ties. We won't share phone numbers, and I'll never see the child again." She might have her reasons for doing that, but in many cases, birth mothers are choosing adoption out of love. In probably most cases, they know that they cannot provide a stable, safe, healthy environment or financially stable environment for this child. Whatever the reason is, they're doing it because they want the very best for this child. And imagine the state coming in and saying, "Well, you're choosing this for your child, and we're going to punish you now that you'll never be able to contact this kid again." But now with open adoption, you've got, if the birth mother's 3 months pregnant, you've got the next 6 months for the families to start building a relationship because these adoptive parents see the birth mother as the unsung hero in all of this. We're becoming parents because of you, and you've chosen us. And why is it that you chose us? And sometimes the reasoning is very profound, and sometimes it's just like, I grew up with a black lab and you guys have a black lab and it just touched my heart. Okay. And you just start building a relationship with this birth mother and sometimes the birth father if he's still involved too. And so that you, once you come to the hospital, sometimes that's the first time you're going to meet in person. This whole time you've been FaceTiming or texting together, you meet in person and it's just a lovely meeting. And then whenever you go home with this baby, you're texting photos to this birth mother who obviously loves the child. And you might even arrange 1 or 2 visits every single year, things like that. And that's what open adoption is like. And the idea is you're doing this because of love as well, because you now have your own child in your arms, and there's somebody on the other side of the country or the other side of the state who also loves them. And the more people who love your child, the better, I can only imagine. There might be some cases where you have to set boundaries because of safety or mental health or whatever. And if there's ever a time you feel like the safety of your family and your child is at risk, then you can get the adoption agency involved to make sure certain boundaries are set. But overall, this can be a very healthy and good thing moving forward.
I've only known one family that I can think of that did anything close or any partial. I think it was partial, where I know it's a friend I've known for a long time, and they actually adopted older children out of a state adoption pool. And she had two boys she adopted. One of them, I know she had the cell phone. She and the birth mother swapped cell phones, cell numbers, and they
Right.
would send pictures and messages and, oh,
Hmm.
hey, he got an A on the test today, and
Right.
that kind of. Now, I don't know if they're still doing that. The boys are both grown. They're in their 20s and they're out in the world making their waves. So I don't know if she's still doing any of that. But
Hmm.
I think at the time it was reassuring to the birth mother to know that my child is with this family and is doing well and is
Yeah.
thriving. Now, I can also seeing my concern when we started and I was reading about open adoption. I was thinking, okay, if it's completely open, is this going to turn into kind of a co-parenting
Yeah.
situation where
Hmm.
they're going to be saying, well, don't ground him for doing this or
Right.
doing that. But it doesn't work out quite that way.
No.
Uh,
No. And if
and
everybody's doing their job, then the birth mother throughout her pregnancy or throughout the entire process will be educated pretty well by the attorney and or the agency to ensure that she is aware what this open adoption is going to look like on her end as well.
yeah, and that's, I think, what needs to be made clear to everybody is where
Hmm.
all the boundaries are. Now, another issue that comes up, and I know this came up in some cases, if you don't have your own biological children, to some that's a blow if they find out they can't have them. And I always thought that, okay, if we adopt a child, we are taking a child out of a potentially bad situation and giving them an opportunity to have a Christian upbringing.
Hmm.
And that's the way I looked at it. And if it ever comes up, I always assume. I have come kind of a legal background, so I try to assume the best, innocence and not guilt,
Sure.
put it in those terms. So I'm assuming the birth mother put the child up for adoption, thinking of his or her best
Yeah.
interests. And now I've got the opportunity, or me and my family have the opportunity to give this child a Christian upbringing that the child might not have had before.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm seeing that as a big positive.
And you're simply sharing the greatest gift from God, and that is love. And of course, the gospel, like you said, my wife has written a book called What Can Hold Our Love? And it's about this family who already has children, mother, father, and two kids, where they have so much love, they start to think about, well, if we have all this extra love, where can we put it to store our love? And they try putting it in a box, but it overflows. They try putting it in a balloon, but it pops. They try putting it on a ship, but the entire ship sinks. And they're puzzled. How can we store this extra love? And then they get a letter in the mail about a child who needs some love. And so they adopt this child and they finally found the perfect holding place for their love. And that's what it is. It's just an opportunity to show more and more love.
And that's the way I'm looking at it. Plus, I've been a house parent in two different group home settings.
Mhm.
And I have seen the kids when they end up in the system. And we've had, I think, three failed adoptions. And in one case, it really, it really set me off. I'll just say that and leave it at that. Where the parents, I think, were doing it. Okay, this child was adopted from an East European country as the Berlin Wall was coming down, and things were breaking open over there. There were a lot of kids in a lot of orphanages all throughout the place that needed homes, and a lot of Americans were almost immediately on airplanes to go over there. And this family, after I got to know them a little bit, struck me as they're going to do whatever's trendy.
Mm,
Okay, so if it's trendy to adopt from East Europe, that's what we'll do. If it's trendy to go to China, or if Cadillac SUVs are popular, now that's what we'll drive. But next year, when Mercedes are popular, we're going to do that. And so anyway, to kind of get to my point, they were this kid ended up in our home group home. They called from a European capital to tell this kid Merry Christmas.
wow.
And I got the idea that, you when you do this, this is for life. This is not like a dog
Ab-
that you can bring home from the pound and say,
yeah,
okay, it's not working, I'm taking it back. And so can you talk, let's talk to that a little bit, that this is permanent. This is as if obviously the child didn't come from your wife's body, but it's still your child.
absolutely. And I can only imagine though, at least the state in which we're in, that it shows the sense of gravity because of how much it costs. I couldn't imagine going through this entire process. And this is not a complaint at all, but these are some of the things that we've had to go through. We've gone through having a complete home study done twice,
Mhm.
and we're now going through also our second renewal. That's costly, but it's also, I mean, I just sent 17 documents to our home study provider yesterday. We're scheduling for her to come all the way from Nashville to spend a day with us. And we've gone to the FBI, we've gone to the police station, we've gone to the UPS store to do fingerprinting, background checks, and everything. And it takes a lot more to adopt than it does to actually have a biological child. So for us, I couldn't imagine looking at this as an option of we're going to try it out for a while. And if we don't like it, then I guess we can always return. Make sure we keep that receipt or something like that.
Yeah.
No, this is for life, just as if we had a biological child. This is for life.
Yeah, and that's what, and in one of the other cases, that is something I don't think sunk in. This is my child, and it may not be my flesh and blood, but this is a child that, if need be, I would, give my life for if I
Yes.
had to, because this is my child. Now, this family was also, I think, fairly wealthy, so
Mhm.
it wasn't a big deal on that regard. But you're right when it comes to all the hoops you have to jump through, all the background checks. And in fact, I talked to a parent once whose mother or mother-in-law was living with them, and they wanted her college transcripts,
Yeah.
going back like 30 or 40 years. And I'm thinking,
Hmm.
well, I could see maybe doing a little records check to make sure there's no criminal record, but your college transcripts, I mean,
Yeah.
grandma's college transcripts going back 30 years, what's that got to do with anything? But they wanted them.
Yeah.
And so this is how intrusive or invasive it can be. Now, we've lived in Canada. We've lived in several states. I really, it's at the point now they want to do a background check on me. Okay, fine, here it is. I've had federal agencies in two countries check me out. If there was anything in that tree, I tell them it would have fallen out a long time ago. So
Yeah.
I'm not worried. It's just that the cost, like you were talking about,
Hmm.
and you got to go down to the UPS store or wherever to get fingerprinted. And then I think we had to provide addresses for like the previous 10 years or something like
Yeah.
that. Now it's been a while, but we did have to provide quite a lot of organizations we belong to, um, and things like that. It was almost like it reminded me a lot of when we moved to Canada and the paperwork we had to fill out.
Yes. Yep. I am very familiar with that too. We got permanent residency in New Zealand, and that required several visas and renewing of those visas till we finally got to that point. And it did remind me of that as well. And that's why I suppose when it came time for them to request these documents, it was like well rehearsed. I know what I'm doing. I know where I've stored those documents. And we also had to get reference letters, and we had to get a letter from our elders and everything to provide for this home study.
Well, and that's just it. Now, the home study I've learned is a little bit different in every state.
Hmm.
We had a representative from the adoption agency come. She walked through the house. We had to have a fire evacuation plan,
Hmm.
and we had to show her the fire extinguishers and where
Hmm.
the all the it kind of like on the airline safety briefing. Our emergency
Yeah.
exits are here, here, there,
Yeah.
and I can't remember if she took some measurements or if we did, but I remember measuring some of the rooms.
Yeah.
How many square feet do you have? How many people you have? Is that anything like what you had to go through? Because I'll be honest, a lot of people when it comes to adoption, they don't know any of this.
Yeah, 100%. We've had to go through that. We are also having to show where we store our cleaning chemicals and making sure that they are
Oh
either
yeah,
locked away or high enough in our medicine cabinets, and whether or not we have a septic system or sewer, and making sure that those are actually functional so that there aren't going to be diseases coming into the house. Smoke alarms, carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide detectors, everything. Yeah. And in our previous home, we had a staircase. So we had to make sure that we had baby gates and all of the connectors, ready to go and approved by OSHA and everything.
yeah. We were on one level, so we didn't have any of that. What about pets?
Yep. So
W-
we just and we typically would not do this because our cat is an indoor cat and everything, but we've had to make sure that all of her vaccines are up to date and provide those certificates every single year. We have to do that because they tell us that we could get that phone call, and if we forget one thing and we're on our way to Minnesota, and then they find out that our cat, her rabies vaccine expired last week, the whole adoption could fail right then and there. And so we have to stay on top of every one of our documents.
and you've got to dot every I and cross every T on these things.
Yes, yes, we do.
Uh, Now, when you go to say, okay, you from your home state, say to Minnesota, which state's laws are you working under?
Aha. And usually it's the birth mothers, but actually both states have to communicate well. And so, for example, we were chosen by a birth mother in California. And the good thing about California is I don't really know the ins and outs, so I'm going to butcher the legalities of this, but here's how I understood it. The attorney was able to represent both us and her. But a lot of states, they don't work like that. So if the
Mhm.
birth mother's from Georgia, then you would have to pay an attorney to represent her, and then you would have to pay an attorney to represent you, and they would communicate to make sure that everything is done until ICPC and so on. But the adoption that we did have moving forward was going to be a little bit easier with just one attorney.
Now, ICPC, you heard you use that term. What is that for those who might not?
Yeah. I can't even remember what it stands for, but it basically means all of the T's have been crossed and the I's have been dotted, and you are now. Here's what we had to do is we would fly to Los Angeles when we found out that the birth mother was in labor, and we would hang out with her in the hospital until she and the baby were both discharged. And then once she and the baby were discharged, then the baby could be in our arms, but we had to stay in California until ICPC. So that would have been about a week to 10 days. And that just means that California has communicated with the courts of Tennessee, provided the sufficient documents so that when we got home with a baby in our arms, we weren't arrested. And
Mhm.
we could say, welcome home to this baby.
Yeah, and in our case, we carry copies of our adoption decree everywhere with us,
Yeah.
just in case,
And
because you mentioned about, they might think you're trying to traffic or something
sure.
like that.
Especially when
The
you're dealing with an interracial adoption.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The first time we flew, Amelia was well, she has her own frequent flyer card with one of the airlines. She took her first flight at what was she, 3 weeks old, I think,
Yeah.
and they wanted to see the birth certificate.
Hmm.
But I said a Florida birth certificate is so vague. I could give that to any female who could pass herself off. So
Yeah.
I carried the adoption decree with me, which has
Good.
got a case number. It's got the judges say it's got everything. And so they accepted that.
Yeah.
But I said, I'm not going to carry an original birth certificate around in this day and age of identity theft. But I said
Sure.
the court documents are public record, and you can easily verify them. But that's another word I would say to adoptive parents, especially if the child is of another race, is make sure you carry, in fact, in the glove compartment, I keep that
Mm.
handy
Yeah.
just in case we're ever stopped. And I tell her, look, if we are ever, we've never been stopped, for speeding or anything with her, but if we are, you keep quiet and you don't make any jokes about being kidnapped or anything. I said, because they have no sense of humor
Yeah.
when it comes to that. And
That's right.
just, yeah, yeah. So now, speaking, kind of that, are you prepared if you do get the call? Because have known here again, you when you get into adoption, you meet more and more people who are in it in various aspects, and we have
Hmm.
met a couple of families that had nothing,
Oh, yeah.
and they get the phone call at 2 in the morning.
Yeah, we are prepared. We've been waiting for that phone call for 3 years now. And let me back up and say two things real quick. I know for the audience, if any of you right now are considering adoption, we might have now scared you away. That certainly wasn't our intention, but let me
No,
also
no.
encourage you that this is totally doable. And you take baby steps at first. And then once you start working with either an agency or a home study provider, they're going to make it as easy as possible for you, giving you a checklist and saying, this is fine. We're going to walk with you. Another thing that we had to do, by the way, is get certified with the Red Cross and CPR training and
That's
so
right.
on. And they'll just walk you through this. It's fine. We are a family who can take baby steps, and that's what we did. And we finally got to the point where we are now adoption ready. And so, yes, we are prepared for this phone call. We've been waiting for 3 years. Now, we did get that phone call back in April from that attorney in Los Angeles saying, hey, I'm here with this birth mother, and she has chosen your family to be the adoptive family. And we were matched with her. And this is adoption terminology. We were matched with her for several months through August. And then we found out some things had happened. And long story short, and also for privacy reasons, I'll simply say this: the
Hmm.
adoption is what's called a reclaim. She pulled out of the adoption, and and so therefore we lost that opportunity. You could call it a failed adoption, but specifically it was called a reclaim. And that means we lost a lot of money. But that's what we were prepared to do, I suppose. And in the end, once the adoption is finished, it will be a very big sum of money. But we also know that once that child is looking us in the eyes, whoever that child is, that we will say it was completely worth it.
And speaking of that, yeah, and we don't. I want to reiterate what he said. We're not trying to scare anybody off. We're just kind of going. I guess you could say we're trying to be real. At
Yeah.
the same time, it's very rewarding. My daughter is
Mm.
12, excuse me, 12 and a half. At that age, every little bit counts, and she's been the biggest blessing.
Oh, yeah.
It's been
Yeah.
well worth it.
Be
And
fruitful and multiply. We are advocates of growing families, and in this day and age, we are certainly advocates of adoption. It's scriptural, by the way. Of course, we want to
Mhm.
be like our Savior who adopted us, and also true religion, James says, is taking care of the widows and orphans during their time of need. Now, some of you can do that through other means other than adoption, but if you can adopt, you are doing the true religion that pleases God our Father.
Well, and if you can't adopt, I've been doing some those shorts on YouTube encouraging people give to an adoption agency in your
Mhm.
area. If you
Or
live in
find a
Dallas,
family.
Texas, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Find a
Well,
family who's going through this.
that's the other thing is if you live in Dallas, Texas, give to an adoption organization there in Dallas or in Minneapolis or wherever you live. Or could you donate some time? Because these birth mothers, a lot of them get minimal care,
Hmm.
minimal prenatal care. Could you drive one of them to a doctor's appointment?
That's right.
Could you take some groceries to one of them? Or could you help a family if maybe you're beyond the childbearing years and you're too old for that sort of thing? Maybe you could help a family out and maybe just go to an agent and anonymously say, "Here, I'd like to give X amount of dollars. Use your judgment, help a family out."
Hmm.
There's lots of ways you can help if you are not in a position where you can actually take a child, or maybe even you could foster a child and keep one.
Yeah.
Our daughter spent 4 days with a foster family while we had to finish up our paperwork and the fees because this blindsided us. We just weren't. We had the nursery ready. I mean, in that sense, we were ready, but we just weren't ready to make just tie up the loose ends. I guess
Hmm.
is what I'm trying to say. But there's lots of ways that you can help with this and make adoption that make that choice available and that choice for the birth mothers and the
Yeah.
families who would like to. Now, and speaking of that, I'm going to be talking a little later today with Home for Jolie,
Yes.
and I wanted to just put in a plug for them
Hmm.
and what they do.
Right. So that's a perfect transition. In addition to everything that Steve just said, if you've got a little bit of extra money and some compassion as well, donate to grants like a Home for Jolie, because they have helped us tremendously. Where those who are going through adoption can apply for a grant and spend some time with the people who volunteer their time. A Home for Jolie, nobody gets paid who works with a Home for Jolie. They volunteer all their time and resources to ensure families like us who are going through adoption can at least bear it a little easier financially because they've stepped in and helped and given grants to adoptive families.
And there's the Dave Thomas Foundation. Dave Thomas, the
Hmm.
founder of Wendy's, he
Yeah.
was adopted and he has done quite a bit for adoption. And you never know. Like I said, we found out kind of happenstance that the president of our bank at the time was
Hmm.
had adopted children, and you never know. There could be someone in that position who can help you who has adopted, because typically they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
The children are treated as if they are the biological children, and in our case, sure, you take a look at our family picture, you can tell that Amelia is adopted, but at the same time, we don't treat her any different than we would, a biological child. She
Sure.
is our child, and
Yeah.
we're at the ball games, we're cheering for him and all that. So you probably have know people who have adopted or are adopted, and you just don't know it.
Hmm. That's right. Actually, with our congregation, well, on the mission field, we were dealing with very small congregations, but now we're part of a fairly large one here in West Tennessee. And there was one day where there's a brother in the congregation who's a big advocate for adoption and tells a lot of adoption stories to encourage the congregation. He said, "You know what? I want to get a photo of everyone in this congregation who has been personally touched by adoption, whether your child or grandchild was adopted, whether you yourself were adopted, anything like that. Meet in the front of the congregation after worship." And 110 people stood up there.
Oh,
And they
wow.
all took a photo together. And that was a huge selection of the congregation. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like Steve said, you probably know people who've been adopted or who have adopted. You just don't know because they're a family. There's no disconnect there.
Percentage wise, how much of the congregation would you say that was?
That'd be about a quarter of the congregation.
Okay, yeah, see, so that's a lot. And I have there are people I have known for years before I knew. In fact, I have a cousin. I was probably about 14 before I knew she was adopted. She's a little bit
Mm,
older than me. And it
wow.
just kind of came up in conversation with my aunt that she was telling me about a trip that she had taken, and the timeline wasn't adding up. And I said, "Well, where were, the girls?" And she said, "Oh, we didn't have them yet." And I said, "What are you talking about?" "Well, they're adopted." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Well, I thought you knew." I said, "No, I didn't know that. I just
Yeah.
figured that, they were your biological kids." And that's another thing. Somebody has asked about me, "Did you ever think about having real kids?"
Oh, real.
And I know what they mean, but
Sure.
let me just help out, folks. My daughter is real, okay? She's a real person. What you're looking for is the word biological. And that's, it's not offensive to me anyway. I just kind of, come back. What do you mean not real? See, she's standing right
Right.
here. I'll say, she looks real to me.
Yeah. Or speaking to Amelia, have you ever had the chance to connect with your real mother or real father or something like that?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And that, and in the case of my cousin I was telling you about, she said, as far as I'm concerned, y'all are my real family.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
and then that's the way it usually works. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add or talk about
Yes.
before?
So we talked about a home for Jolie, complete advocate for them. Please go support them however you can. Even if you can't financially, just contact them and say, hey, I don't have any money, but what can I do to help? I'm sure there are ways that you can help promote and spread the word and other things as well. But I also want to talk about Both Hands, bothhands.org, not associated with the church, but it is a religious or faith-based organization. And the idea there is, so where do you get the idea of both hands? You're going to give both of your hands, one hand for the widow, one hand for the orphan. So you find now for us, we were on the receiving end of this, but an adoptive family organizes a service project. First, you find a widow or a widower in your community, someone who's a true widow indeed. And you talk to her and say, hey, I want to help you. How can I help you around your house, for instance? And she said, well, we got gutters falling down over here, and this bedroom needs to be painted, and my deck is falling apart, and so on. Great. Let me help you with that. And you gather a group of volunteers. And if you're a part of a church, of course, that's where you're going to get your volunteers. You get a group of 20 or 30 people, say, hey, in 2 months' time, we're going to go to Sally's house and we're going to help her reinstall her gutters, paint her bedroom, fix her deck. And we're going to get some handymen of the church who know what they're doing to help us make sure that we do this properly. And in the meantime, we're going to send out letters. We're going to try to send out 600 letters. When you got 30 people involved, all they have to do is send out 20 letters each. So we get a list of names, and these are handwritten letters. Well, first, it's actually a pre-printed letter, and then you write a note on the individual one saying, hey, I'm going to go help a widow. I'm going to spruce up her house free of charge for her, and I'm asking you if you would sponsor me while I do so. And it's kind of
Okay.
like anybody who said, hey, I'm going to run a 5K for St. Jude. Will you sponsor me? That's the idea. I'm going to go work on this widow's house. I'm not going to charge her a thing. And we're even going to provide the supplies and the paint and everything. Would you sponsor me while I do that to help a family who's currently adopting? And they make it as easy as possible. That letter has a QR code. They give directly through the Both Hands Foundation. And so we still have a page up because we were trying to raise $50,000 for our adoption. We've made it to 29,000 now, but this is still up and they said it's still going to keep working until our adoption is completed. And so we sent out all those letters, and we actually sent out over 900, nearly 1,000 letters of people asking them, will you sponsor us while we work on this widow's house? On May 10th this year, we did go to the widow's house and we did all those things for her and brought her to tears, absolutely changed her life, changed the volunteer's life, and it changed our lives because we've now been granted $29,000 towards our very expensive adoption, and it changed our lives too. So
So
both
is
hands.
that like if you came to me and would I sponsor you like $50 or $100 for the job, or is it by the hour, or how does it
No,
work?
it's whatever you choose. So you go to the website, and if you want $5, you give through the website. Some people have given over $1,000, and so if you got $5 to spare, then you would sponsor us simply $5.
Okay, and what's the website again?
All right, so both hands. Let me see. Bothhands.org, BOTHANDS.org. And
Okay.
that's the main website. Now, our specific one is bothhands.org/Mosher, Mosher hyphen 1351. And
Okay.
I don't know if it'll do any good, but I can put that in the chat.
Yeah, you could. And just see if you never know who might be watching these.
Yeah.
Uh so
And
and
by
so
the
and
way,
those
if you go to that website now, even if you're not going to sponsor us, it'll tell you quite a lot about our situation and what Both Hands is. And you can click play on a video that is the little documentary of us working on that house.
okay, and I'm going to also put this over in the Facebook chat, which I keep looking at. There's a few people watching. I'm just wondering if any of them have questions, want to,
Yeah.
because we may even have the right answer to your question. Who knows?
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, you may get lucky. Uh,
Yeah.
so, so have you got any other projects lined up with both hands, or?
Well, this is the only one we had planned at this point, but we're probably at the stage where it might be time to do another one. But we've kind of exhausted uh,
Mhm.
our local volunteers. We'll see about maybe doing one from a distance. I'm not really sure how that'll work, but
Well, I wish I had known about this a year ago. My mother-in-law lives over in Middle Tennessee, and she needed a deck repaired on the back of her house. But
yeah.
she already paid somebody to do it. If I'd have known about this sort of opportunity, I would have passed it on to her.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Yes. Well, anybody who's interested in helping with adoption or adopting yourself, check out Both Hands. It really is amazing. And 100% of the donations go toward the adoptive family. Both Hands doesn't keep any of it because they themselves are a combination of employees, but also volunteers, and they receive their money elsewhere. So
it,
if you sponsor a family, you can know 100% goes to them. And actually, Both Hands was doing a promotion where they matched the first $3,000.
okay, and that's a big help. Now, do you know they and Home for Jolie are donations tax deductible, or do you know the answer to that?
I know for sure Both Hands is. Whenever you give, they give you a tax deductible receipt. And I assume a Home for Jolie is as well, because it is an official foundation.
Yeah, and I think they are a 501
Yeah.
tax deductible charity. That's the word I was looking
Sure.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they are one. So, but we'll find out this afternoon. I'm going to be pre-recording an interview with Robin from there, and then
Great.
that'll air next week. And then tomorrow, I'm going to be airing part one of my interview with Kathy Carroll, who was adopted out of a state adoption pool a little later than most are. She was about 4 when she was adopted,
Okay. Kathy
and
Carroll
talked.
from Denton, Texas, or around the Dallas area?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
not even in Texas.
All right. Never mind. Not the same
And
one.
yeah, yeah. And so someone just put something. Oh, okay. We just said that they are. I'm assuming that means
A
either
Home
the
for
Home for
Jolie.
Jolie is tax deductible,
Yeah.
is tax exempt. Somebody was looking that up for us. Thank you,
Right.
Debbie. It's sort of my producer, I guess you could say. I call her the program observer.
Yeah.
She's the one that'll text me and say, "Hey, I can't hear you," or
Uh-huh. Well, yes, a
I,
Home for Jolie. When you talk to Robin later, let her know that earlier today you had this conversation with me. I love the people from a Home for Jolie.
Yeah, they're doing a really good work, and we got involved with the family, the Jolie's family, years
Mhm.
ago. We went to a fundraiser dinner for them and their adoption. See, and that's the other thing that here again, I don't want to scare anybody off, but do understand the cost that goes into this. And again, if you are at a point where you are not adopting or for whatever reason, if you've got some funds that you can help a family, do it because
Mhm.
this would be a big boost for a family and a big help for them to be able to do this. I don't know if there's any way that we can help lower the costs of adoption. I really wish there was some way we could, other than to keep an eye on Congress, and if
Mm,
the tax credits ever get to a point where they want to expire, is write your congressman or your senator and say, hey, don't let those expire.
yeah. And
There's
in
too
fact,
many
increase
children out
them.
there that need a home.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So, all right. Anything else you'd like to mention to our audience before we wrap it up?
Well, I was going to give a bit of a plug for you and 7 weeks as well, because you
Okay.
asked me about it yesterday. And so I'm a coffee drinker, and actually, this whole episode is called a coffee conversation, right? So for those of you who like coffee, I was going to already recommend 7 weeks coffee. I guess their website is what, 7weeks.com,
Yeah.
7weekscoffee.com.
I'll tell you
And
what, I can.
yeah, they are a pro-life organization, and the idea is at 7 weeks after conception, a baby in the womb is the size of a coffee bean. And
Hmm.
so 10% of all of their proceeds goes towards pregnancy centers to help birth mothers. And so I would recommend if you are a coffee drinker, that's a company that you might want to go ahead and support. And in addition to that, Steve is an ambassador for them. And so what you can do is when you buy your coffee, use his specific link or a code at checkout,
Yeah.
and he'll get a bit of a
I'm
hit from
trying
that.
to do a screen share here so I can put it up. And I don't know if Zoom is going to let me do this since we already started.
Mm.
But you can go to 7 weeks, spell it out, 7weekscoffee.com. And for 10% off your first purchase, you can put in Cordle, that's my last name, Cordle 2013 at checkout. And they've given over $1 million to over 1,000 pro-life agencies around the country. And so can't say I just became an ambassador for them here in the last week or so. So I've been plugging their coffee. They've got several holiday blends coming up. So check out the website, 7 Weeks Coffee, drink coffee, save a life.
Yeah. And before I even knew that Steve was connected to them, I was already a Patreon of 7 weeks. I get my every month and a half, I get my 5 pound bag of beans just at my doorstep. I'm already subscribed.
So, and that's the way to do it if you're a serious coffee drinker. And like I said, you will be helping out pro-life causes.
Hmm.
So, well, I thank you for taking the time to talk to us here, Lance, and we'll be keeping you and your family in prayer,
Thank you.
and hope things will go smooth for your adoption. Now, you don't have any other birth mothers, I guess, right now
Mm.
that you're talking to.
Nope. I would love to be interrupted right now with a phone call, but at this point, we're just waiting for the agency to call us.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you. And let me just take a quick look. Nothing in the chat. I thought I'd just do a quick look there and see if there was anything for questions or anything. But thank you for being here, and I thank everybody else. And tomorrow at 2 o'clock Central Time, join me with my for the part one of my interview with Kathy Carroll and being adopted out of a state adoption pool at an older age. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Everybody have a great weekend. Be good to yourself, and if you possibly can, be good to somebody else. Thanks for being here.